Good afternoon, everyone. Ben here, and why in the world am I doing No, I'm just kidding. So today we're doing my initial ratings for the Senate races, and this is following some news about two particular Senate seats, the one in Georgia and the one in Iowa. Stacey Abrams declining to run for the Senate race to unseat David Perdue in Georgia, and basically any candidate that the Democrats tried recruiting for Iowa to unseat Joni Ernst. And I've listed any race either side might think is competitive or might try to take a crack at, depending on how things go. So seats like Kentucky, the open seats in Kansas and Tennessee, Virginia for whatever reason, and of course the Democrats may try and hold on to Alabama, I'm not sure. And as it sits, we've got a bunch of safe races, and the Republicans start off with a 1 Senate seat advantage. So let's get cracking. I'll just go from states I would consider. I'll list out the states I think are safe regardless what happens, and that's basically Kansas, safe Republican, Tennessee, safe Republican, Kentucky, safe Republican. I'm actually going to go Alabama, safe Republican. And the reason why I'm listing those three is four is safe Republican is because it's a presidential election year, and the vote totals in those races are going to be very similar to the presidential vote totals. And that's actually one of the things I think is going to happen across the nation, is the votes are going to be extremely close to each other. I don't see any other races that I would rate as safe Democrat at this stage. But moving to the likely category, I think it's fairly reasonable to classify that as Minnesota. And this is my personal forecast. So these are confidence margin. So this is just a confidence rating. I would consider Minnesota and Virginia both to be likely into the Democratic column. In the same vein, you're not going to have a very popular challenge in Texas on the Democratic ticket. So I'm putting John Cornyn's seat as likely to stay with him. And with Abrams abandoning the race, my confidence in Georgia is pretty high. Now moving on to the lean category, we're going to start with the Republicans. I think Thom Tillis, his name is spelled Thom, but that seems like a short. It's kind of one of those. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's just Thom Tillis. I'm rating that as a lean just because North Carolina is a very close state, and it's one that Democrats are going to try and take, Republicans are going to try and hold. It's a presidential election year, and it's going to be a very competitive race to begin with. If this were a midterm year, I would probably lean it towards the Democrats or maybe tilt it towards the Democrats, and that's if Donald Trump was currently president. If it was a Democratic president, I'd probably lean this or make this a likely Republican seat. And moving up to, and by the way, this would assuming Donald Trump wins the election, this hands control of the presidency, or not the presidency, hands control of the Senate over to the Republicans. But at a minimum, they would force a Democratic presidency in order for Democrats to have any power in the Senate. Moving on to leans Democratic seats, I'm actually rating Michigan as leans Democratic, not because I expect Michigan to be, mostly because I do expect the race to be close, but it's also because I'm unsure of who the Republican candidate's going to be, and I think if the Republicans run the same person they ran in 2016, I believe it's Sean James. If they run the same person against Gary Peters, I'm absolutely certain he will. I would change this to tilt or leans Republican, because he way outperformed what would be expected in Michigan against Debbie Stabenow, who was extremely popular, more so than Gary Peters. And in a presidential election year with elevated turnout for the Republicans, I think that would be enough to carry the state. In this category, I am also putting Colorado, and the only reason why it's not likely is because of Cory Gardner. Yeah, it's Cory Gardner, who is a Republican and an incumbent. Incumbents tend to have an advantage. Now, moving on to the tilts, I am tilting Arizona. Well, actually, this is weird. I'm going to put Arizona in the leans Republican category. I was tempted to tilt it, but then I remembered this is going to be very similar to my presidential map, with one exception. And that's, I'm giving this seat to, or leaning it towards not Kyrsten Sinema, sorry, Martha McSally. I got my Arizona senators confused for a second. This is going to Martha McSally, and the reason I'm leaning it towards her is she's technically the incumbent, but it's mostly because it's a presidential election year, and I think we all expect the Republicans and Donald Trump to capture Arizona, and it just makes the most sense to have this be the initial ranking. And I put Virginia in the likely column because Mark Warner is a lot more popular than Tim Kaine. If it were Tim Kaine, I'd probably put this as lean. And moving up to Iowa, because it's a swing state, I'm only leaning it towards Joni Ernst. There is a chance she could be vulnerable, and I'm not quite ready to put it as likely, even though my presidential forecast and my personal forecast has a high confidence in Iowa. Move over to New Hampshire, and I just don't really, I just don't see it for the Republicans, at least not right now. But it's a tilt because I really do consider it a true toss-up. New Hampshire is going to be a very close state and one to look at. Maine, on the other hand, I'm tilting in favor of, which one is it? It's not Murkowski, it's Suzanne Collins. Murkowski is Alaska's very moderate Republican. Collins is fairly popular, but this is going to be her toughest re-election campaign yet. So, that's the battleground for the Senate. Based off of this, I do expect there to be a net gain of 1 seat. Really? Net gain? No, this is sorry. Not a net gain. I expect the situation in the Senate to remain the same. And that's the interesting thing, is that the Republicans have enough of an advantage in the Senate that it's not really up for grabs. It's all about the House and the presidency. Now, it's not to say Democrats don't have opportunities to flip the chamber. North Carolina, Iowa, Arizona, and Maine would definitely do it. The problem is they have to win the presidency in order to flip the Senate, and even then that might not be enough. If they flip Maine and Colorado and they're unable to flip these 3 seats because they don't win those states in the president's in the presidential election, again, chances are they won't win in the Senate election, and they would still be unable to take the Senate. So they have to win those seats in the presidential election as well. And let's be honest here, Iowa and Arizona aren't exactly likely. Well, Arizona and North Carolina are about the same. Iowa is approaching where I'd say there's a chance, but it's not likely to happen. What I will say is that the Democrats did avoid having a lot of competitive seats in a presidential election year. For example, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania. If those 3 seats that were up last year in 2018 were up in 2020, those would be a lot more interesting, and that would actually make it real. That would make a fun map. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Bye.